next speaker for today is Dr. Dileep Raman, the co-founder of Cloudphysician Healthcare, which is a healthcare technology company. Their group of highly trained ICU specialists reach out through the internet to assist doctors at work in their resource-constrained ICUs in far-flung locations in our country. Jointly founded with Dr. Dhruv Joshi, this model is hugely successful and growing in the US. And India, of course, makes a serious case for it. One such example is their care delivered to a hospital in Motihari in East Champaran district. Mr. Dileep and his team provides help and 24/7 support from their high-tech center in Bengaluru. It is a remarkable story worth the time of anyone in India who wants to jump to the technology bandwagon but are unsure of the road to take.
Thank you. You are welcome, sir.
All right, with the customary technology check, thank you for the generous introduction. I'm an ICU doctor, and one of the things that we have come to learn both by our own personal experience and by what medical literature indicates is that a critically ill patient in an ICU is best served when treated by an intensivist. An intensivist is an ICU specialist. That is the single most important thing for an ICU patient while he's getting care in the ICU to get better care. Now, who is an intensivist? An intensivist is someone who has dedicated and special training in the field of intensive care. And the reason why I bring this up is it is not commonly known what an ICU specialist should be like. So they must have a basic training in medicine, of course, and then do an undergraduate specialization, a subspecialization, and then a super specialization. That's what it takes to be in the ICU. And naturally, that means that we have a problem. We have a problem because India is projected to have about 3 lakh ICU beds in the next couple of years. Take a moment for that number to sink in, because the people that are out there to care for these number of beds are less than 5,000, and we've counted them ourselves. And that leads to a multitude of problems in the ICU. Medical errors, drops in quality, mistreatment opportunities. These are commonplace across ICUs in India. 90% of Indian ICUs do not have an intensivist at bedside. So, this brings us to another problem. After the problem of access, it brings us to a problem of skill and a shortage of trained expertise. This shortage of trained expertise is prevalent, just like I mentioned, and it is due to this shortage that we have drops in quality that are also frequent. And these patients who are the most vulnerable and depend on quality medical care minute to minute have a problem receiving that care and receiving that quality. And that ties to the third main problem that we have, which is cost. India is all about cost, unfortunately, today. Quality takes a backseat, access has taken a backseat, and the barrier is cost. So how do you deliver good quality and access at an equitable cost to solve healthcare problems? And most of the models we have of technology are just carbon copy, cut paste models from the West, which are trimmed down models of Western expertise that don't really work in the Indian setting. You can talk about interoperability problems that these small devices in rural tier 2, tier 3 cities have, which have to do with technology solutions such as HL7 or a fire module, which is how devices talk to each other. That's non-existent. Nobody pays attention to that in India. So if you put these 3 things together, you are faced with a rigid iron triangle. And this is a problem that we face today in healthcare in India. We have a problem where access, quality, and cost are extremely difficult to handle. So as an example, if you give high quality and give access to everyone, you're going to get stuck with the cost factor. And this is a challenge. This is the healthcare iron triangle that has been described since the 90s, and we are facing this for decades now. And healthcare, as usual, you would have heard this theme from the previous speakers, healthcare is slow to embrace this technology. Is it because we are too busy? Is it because we think that technology is not the right solution for healthcare? Airline industry, pharma, data science, engineering, they've embraced technology hand in glove. But in healthcare, this is a real challenge. It's a real problem. And this problem can only be sorted out by domain experts. You need to have doctors, nurses work together hand in hand with engineers and people who are good at technology to solve these problems. You are not going to have the isolated Googles and Amazons of the world solving this problem on their own. Now, but that is the precise reason why healthcare is actually ripe for disruption. The reason is because the penetration is so low that if you try anything to actually solve this problem, you're in a better shape, a better position to solve it, because the low-hanging fruit makes it that much easier. You just need the right people to do it. Now, how we do it is to try and change the efficiency dynamic of a doctor-patient ratio. So a traditional intensivist will take care of maybe 10 or 15 patients a day, and if you're in Europe, it's more like 6 to 8 patients a day, and the reason is they don't want to compromise quality. From what we are doing at Cloudphysician, we are trying to change this ratio by using technology so that the shortage of doctors and shortage of critical care nurses is addressed and their dynamics changed, where one doctor and their team can take care of 150 patients. We're not too far from that. This is already happening in the West. We just have to do it right our way. And like I was saying, it takes a team to do it, and the team has to have the right mix of doctors, nurses, and engineers. So our head of engineering, for example, has spent 10 years in the US as a computer science expert and worked with one of the best healthcare EMR or electronic medical record platforms in the world. Both of us, the co-founders, Dhruv and myself, are ICU experts with more than 7 to 8 years of ICU training in the US and expertise with various Tele-ICU systems, so that we can understand what actually would work better in India and avoid repeating the mistakes by simply copying what is out there. So in a very brief format, how we work is that we are a standard hub and spoke model, where we have a hub here in Bangalore and we connect to multiple spokes around the country. But that's where the similarities end. We use our platform to actually augment our clinical behavior, how we deliver the expertise, so that that patient in the remote area in Muzaffarpur or Motihari can actually get value-based, equitable healthcare. That's important, because that's all they care about. The patient there doesn't care about if you came in a Mercedes-Benz or you use the most high-flying Philips or GE platform. What they really care about is the service. That's the human element. That's why we're a healthcare technology company and not a technology healthcare company. So just to actually have a real-world example, this is a patient that was there in Muzaffarpur, Bihar. Muzaffarpur has been famous for all the wrong reasons, unfortunately. The childhood deaths that were seen recently happened in the same city. This boy was 14 years old. You know, like in every ICU, there's a grey cloud hanging over everyone's life there. He was in bad shape. He had to have been transferred to Patna if he had to have a chance to live. But Patna was 2.5 hours away. And in the condition that he was in, it wasn't possible for a viable transfer. He probably wouldn't have made it. Thankfully, this was one of our clients, and we had already established a good network with them over the last few months and worked very closely with the doctor there. And we were able to carefully take a look at this patient, understand what was going on, look at the graphics, look at the dynamics of what the devices were showing, and tell them that there is something we can do for him. And something that was very simple, easily trainable to the bedside, that we were able to institute that the hospital hadn't done before, something called prone ventilation, where you flip the patient on and allow them to breathe in a certain particular well-defined pattern. It doesn't need any cool devices, it just needs expertise. So we were able to handhold the doctor, make sure we work together as a team and make this happen. And that 14-year-old kid today is where he belongs. He's in school. He's doing well, he's fine after about a 14-day stay in the ICU. Thank you. Just to address the doctor here is the hero. It's not us. We make this happen because he needs our help, and we are able to help this guy who's working 24 hours a day, making sure that his ICU patients are well taken care of. So it is this kind of teamwork, this kind of effort that we are interested in. And full disclosure, we have patient consent to share this image in line with what Dr. Patta was talking about. Privacy is paramount here. So how we did it is part of how our platform works and how it ties in with what we have at Cloudphysician. So I'll share a video of a real patient right now, and for privacy reasons we won't show the face obviously, but this is a breathing machine. These are exquisite details of the graphics that we can see. We can figure out what's wrong with the patient, we can look at the graphs, we can look at the heart rate, blood pressure, ECG recordings, zoom into what we are interested in real time, happening now from Bangalore to Motihari, which is where Gandhiji's movement started in East Champaran district. So, you know, it's far-flung, it's about 90 kilometers from the Nepal border, but this is possible today. And you want to look at the patient's details, you want to look at what medications the patient is getting, you will get picture clarity that is better than the ones that we used in the US. This is happening in India today. And you are able to drill down to all the specific details that an ICU patient has, and you can even see the name of the drug, you can see it clearly, what dose it's running, you can zoom on to the infusion pump and see what the patient is getting in real time. So just a quick demo on what our platform looks like. These are all test patients, we don't have anyone with these fancy names, but it's a platform designed by us, by intensivists, for intensivists in India. So as an example, you enter the patient's record, you're able to see their vital signs, charted, what a doctor wants to see. All the usual HIS and the confusing platforms that are there out there in India today, we've reviewed about 35 of them. They're not physician or nurse centric. We wanted to design something that is simple. You have orders, you have labs, you have vital signs, and really that's all what you need to manage the patient. So for example, you have all our doctor notes written by qualified intensivists in fair amount of detail, in compliance with all the current guidelines. One of the critiques that you hear is doctor's handwriting is not legible. So that problem is addressed. And the bedside doctor has an app where he can read what our doctors have suggested and how the team can move forward together to take care of the patient. All your labs within the last 24 hours or since admission are available. If you want to take a quick look at the X-ray, well, you have that as well. You can zoom in, you can look at any amount of detail and take a look at a bird's eye view of what's happening with the patient. Now, you know, we don't just want to be another platform. There are hundreds of them out there. So we wanted to bake in medical details into this. So for example, there is a disease called septic shock, which kills hundreds and thousands of patients every day. We wanted to have a protocol-based system where a one click, it takes less than 30 seconds to enforce the sepsis protocol, which is a leading killer, so that the doctor there at the bedside can read about what orders we have placed. And not only that, they need to have an access to understand why we are doing what we do. So we have designed a protocol for them so that they can read it, they have it on their fingertips as an access as to why someone from Bangalore, why a specialist from Bangalore is recommending XYZ, so that their patients can get the best care. So again, it's not tech-centric, it's more education-centric. We're trying to make this happen at the bedside in real time. Now the next question that would pop in is, all this data needs to be written down so that it can be printed at the bedside to be a part of their paper record. Remember, many of these hospitals do not have an electronic health record. So we have to bridge that gap. This bridging of a gap is not a common problem in the US, for example, but in India it's very real. So we had to take a platform that is paperless in Bangalore and convert it to paper in Bihar, which can be done, and which is what I would like to show you. So this is a standard note that is written by an ICU specialist. You can see, important points that they've looked at. They've looked at labs that are important. They've seen what the heart rate is, and they've jotted this down in a note. It's fairly detailed. If there are any doctors here, they would look at it and say, okay, that's a good review of each organ system. Cardiovascular, neurological, infectious disease, skin, looks pretty good. What if I told you that this was not written by a doctor? So this was written by what we call IRA, which is our machine learning algorithm that helps the doctor write a detailed note. So by using this tool, our doctors are essentially able to cut down their note writing time by 30 or 40%. Down the line, when insurance companies become more and more aggressive and are looking at data and looking at attention to detail, IRA will go a long way in helping the doctor write a detailed note that meets guidelines and yet can be reviewed by the physician for accuracy. So one thing that we like to say is that we're not too gung-ho on artificial intelligence. You'll see people talk a lot at length about AI and machine learning, and the common joke is that when it is AI, it's on PowerPoint, but when it's about machine learning, it's actually on a language called Python. So we don't believe in AI, we believe in AI, which is augmented human intelligence. Natural stupidity is far more common than artificial intelligence. That's what needs to be addressed. And we are trying to use technology tools to help with that, rather than make this the front and center. So Tele-ICU networks can help with that. So where we are today is we have 10 ICU specialists working for us at Cloudphysician full time, which is very unusual outside a corporate hospital. This is the highest concentration of fully trained ICU doctors outside a corporate hospital in Bangalore. As you can see, we have access to a lot of data, a lot of patient data that actually helps us make these decisions and take good care of our patients. And we are now in 18 ICUs, around 140 beds or so that are covered. And that brings us back to the central problem. This iron triangle of healthcare needs to be addressed so that health, value and equity are provided to these patients, are provided to these vulnerable patients quickly. And there are ways to disrupt it, but the leading way seems to be technology. And while technology has all its shortcomings, it would take domain experts to figure out how best to use it and how it will actually fit into the current paradigm. That's the challenge. So our team is young, it's dynamic and it's growing. We're about 35 people, doctors, nurses, engineers, developers, dietitians and pharmacists included. And we are looking to provide quality healthcare, provide access to quality healthcare, provide an impact and hopefully save lives. That's our goal. With that, I conclude and leave it open to comments or questions. Thank you for your patient hearing.
I appreciate if you can stay back for
Sure,
a while.
thanks.
Thank you very much. First time we are seeing in the healthcare conference, quality, access and care is being addressed. We really appreciate.
Thank you.
We really appreciate.
Please.
Others can also start asking questions.
So Dr. Dileep, what is the legal side of this? How much has the law provision for this?
Yeah, so that's my favorite question.
Because we are having people who can highlight this to the lawmakers.
Yes. This is a challenge. Thank you for that question. There are multiple ways to address that question. There is a textbook way to address that question where I would tell you there is an IT Act of 2000 and 2002 that is 20 years old and it's going to get updated in 2021 in the form of the Disha Act and the Personal Data Protection Bill. As it stands today, telemedicine is legal in India. You have the Indian Army doing it, you have SGPGI doing it from Lucknow. You have multiple private enterprises such as Apollo, Fortis doing all sorts of telemedicine models. So that is not the problem. The problem is what are the legal guardrails that need to be followed to make telemedicine effective and safe for the patient. Now that has not been worked out. And until that happens, we will still be dealing with these issues. So as of now, you need to make sure you have consent and you need to make sure you have documentation. So that's the textbook answer. The reality is far different. The reality is that India runs on chai and India also runs on WhatsApp. So all patient information, all your x-rays, all the private information on the patient is through telephone and WhatsApp, which we believe is the absolutely wrong way to do things. That is illegal. So whenever a doctor or a healthcare team asks us, is this illegal? We, rather than giving the textbook answer, say that you're already doing something that is actually not legal. You're already taking care of patients on WhatsApp or telephone and you don't have any protection. But when we write our detailed note and we put the notes at bedside, we print it remotely for these patients, you actually have a higher safeguard from a legal standpoint because like I showed you, we've met guidelines, we've documented it, everything on black and white. The bedside doctor still can take ownership of the patient and co-sign and cross-sign on this. One important distinction from let's say an M-Fine or a Practor is that on M-Fine you have a doctor, you have a screen, you have a patient. In this model, you're not replacing the doctor at the bedside. Absolutely not. You're augmenting what is there at bedside. So it is doctor, screen, doctor, patient. It's a very different dynamic. And it's a much more secure, legally tenable dynamic because you have a doctor who is there, who is using his friends or his consultants to deliver better care. Very similar to the model that's happening on Facebook, for example. The doctor who's doing surgery is not giving legal and liability to the guy who's helping from Chennai, for example. So it's more of a doctor's doctor, it's more of a B2B business, which makes it far more legally secure, to answer your question. Thank you.
Nice talk and interesting phenomenon. I hope this will flourish in days to come. My question is, intensive care anywhere, the real-time intensive care is a place where there's a room where the intensivists keep meeting the patient party again and again and again, and you'll have calls from some doctor from US, somebody. How is that? Do you deal with the patient party straight away? How is that tackled?
Yeah, that's again very interesting, because what we realized was, the first thing that we were told when we started this in India was that this won't work in India. India mein nahi chalega. India ke patients ko doctor haath pakarna chahiye and bedside pe hona chahiye. Great, valid point, and I absolutely believe that that is important, because before we did this we were all ICU doctors as well. But in India the doctor's time is also at a premium. So if the doctor is not there, what the patient really wants is some sort of a contact and a connect. And we routinely do teleconferencing sessions with patients and their families and talk to them about their illness. They're just happy to talk to someone. Okay, we can't hold their hand, but at least we buy the time so that while the bedside consultants come, there is somebody for this patient and their family to talk to face via teleconferencing system. Now the really cool thing about this US family and the family in Europe or Australia is that using our teleconferencing solution, we can actually show that family member who is in the US and UK their own loved one who's in the ICU and have a chat with them in real time. There's no better way to engage a family member outside India than doing a teleconferencing, showing what we are seeing, because we can share the screen. We'll tell them this is how your mom is. Rest assured they're in good hands. And what ends up happening is that these family members who are abroad, they start using the command center to understand what's happening with their patient, with all the guardrails for privacy in place. They'll just ask, okay, thank you for talking to us yesterday. Since we are a 24/7 enterprise, they'll just call us, how is she doing now? Because they're up now, all their other doctors are sleeping in India. So they're awake in the US, in California, in the Valley, and they want to know what's happening with their grandmother here in India. Guess what? There's a service that can make that happen.
Thank
So
you. One more question coming, sir.
Only one question I have.
Sure.
See, this is fantastic and excellent. Your presentation was absolutely fantabulous. When you are managing the patient through the telemedicine or through the remote or through the virtual, so that means that in the place where the patients are there, is it okay if you have a normal physician or you need an ICU specialist?
So in a perfect world, if my family member is in an ICU, I want someone with ICU expertise there 24/7, waiting with medication and a stethoscope. That's never going to happen. Right? It doesn't even happen in the US. It's not going to happen in India for at least 25 years because the training programs are not going to catch up. So the reality in some cities like Muzaffarpur and Motihari is that they don't have a qualified BSc nurse in the whole town. So we can just simply immediately forget about having a physician with the full degree of training. So we cannot deny that our patients in these areas need care. We don't set that as a barrier. This is the lowest barrier to get ICU care in India right now. So what we are saying is, you give us someone who has some degree of ICU training, doesn't matter who he is. We would like to train he or she and help them take care of their patients. It is better than seeing these patients not get good quality care than to wait for a perfect environment to happen, because it's not going to happen. So something that we strongly believe in is that we will follow all the guidelines on our side. We will work with whatever is there on the bedside. If they don't have a qualified nurse, that's fine. We will at least try and make sure that if they can't reach 100%, let's not leave them straddling at 5% or 0%. Let's get them up to where we can do something better. So, I mean, yes, we would love to have someone fully qualified, but that's not the reality.
One more question, last question.
Yes.
I just wanted to kind of, I think, it's a brilliant concept and very brilliantly presented by you. I just wanted to know from your experience of the last few years, have you ever confronted a situation of cybercrime or kind of something like medjacking?
Yeah, it's going to happen. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. So before the Personal Data Protection Act comes into play and the Disha Act come into play, since we had some overseas training, we kind of knew where we needed to be. So our platforms are HIPAA compliant. Now HIPAA is a US law that mandates security and confidentiality. So we had baked that in from day one, and when the Data Protection Act comes into play, we will be in compliance with that. So from a security standpoint, the platform is secure. It has all the bells and whistles that are required for security and.
Have you confronted any kind of effort?
Not yet, but the problem is that as the data swells, that effort is going to happen. So we have to have those guardrails in place. We have firewalls in place. We're actually upgrading our entire IT network to match that. We have these multiple layers of security in place. It's something called a software-defined WAN technology, which we are upgrading to. We are a Cisco Launchpad company, and so we are using the backbone of Cisco's expertise, which are market leaders in networking and safety of networks, to make sure that we are in line with these things, because like you rightly point out, that's extremely important. But the problem is not going to be in the Bangalore end. Just to be certain about that, the leak of data will happen at the spoke site, because that's more likely and a softer target.
Thank you, Dr. Dileep Raman. I call upon Dr. Ashok Tyagarajan to come to the dais to share the memento to Dr. Dileep Raman. Please. Give a big hand.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.